Before Mayweather's defense, before Pacquiao's lightning speed and global stardom, there was a man who trained like he was chasing a ghost and fought like he had something to prove to the devil himself. Roberto Durán wasn't just a boxer. He was a storm in gloves. Every punch came with the weight of his past. He didn't train like other fighters. He trained like he was preparing for something darker, like he knew pain better than the rest. What made him hit so hard? Why did he fight with that kind of rage? And what kind of training turns a poor kid from Panama into one of the most feared men in boxing history? This isn't just about how Duran trained his body. It's about how he trained his mind, his spirit, and how he cultivated that signature ferocity that made champions like Sugar Ray Leonard question everything they knew about boxing. Welcome to Back to Boxing. Before we can understand Duran's training, we need to understand the man himself. Born in 1951 in Panama, Roberto Duran's childhood was defined by struggle. When his American father abandoned the family, young Roberto was forced to quit school in 3rd grade. By age 8, he was selling newspapers, shining shoes, and even dancing for coins in the streets to help feed his siblings. This hard-scrabble upbringing built 3 crucial attributes that no training regimen could ever replicate. First, a hunger. Not metaphorical hunger, but actual physical hunger that taught him to fight with desperation. Duran would later say, "When I fought, I remembered the hunger I felt, and that made me more ruthless." Second, a natural physical toughness. Duran swam in the shark-infested waters of Panama Bay, ran barefoot on scorching pavements and slept on concrete floors. His body adapted to hardship before he ever stepped into a boxing gym. Third, street fighting instincts. Before formal training, Duran fought in the alleyways of El Chorrillo. He wasn't learning the Marquess of Queensberry rules. He was learning how to hurt people, how to intimidate, how to survive. When legendary trainer Ray Arcel first saw the teenage Duran, he remarked, "He doesn't just want to beat opponents. He wants to devour them. You can't teach that kind of ferocity." Duran's formal boxing education began at age 8 at the Neco de la Guardia gym in Panama City. While other boxing prodigies might have been carefully guided through fundamentals, Duran's early training focused almost exclusively on offense. His first trainer, Nestor Plomo Quiñones, saw something primal in the young fighter that shouldn't be tamed, but rather sharpened. By 16, Duran had developed his trademark style: relentless pressure, vicious body punching, and an uncanny ability to slip punches while constantly moving forward. This wasn't by accident. It was the product of hundreds of hours spent in suffocating heat, working with trainers who understood that Duran's greatest weapon wasn't just his power, but his ability to break fighters mentally. Legendary training camps. What made Roberto Durán different wasn't just his hands or his heart, it was how he prepared for war. Most fighters trained hard. Duran trained like a man possessed. After 1971, under the guidance of legendary trainers Ray Arcel and Freddie Brown, his camps became the stuff of boxing folklore, brutal, isolated, and almost spiritual in their intensity. While other fighters put in 6 to 8 weeks, Duran would vanish for months. No press, no distractions, just pain, sweat, and purpose. His camps were usually tucked away in remote hills, far from Panama City's noise, where the only things louder than the cicadas were the sounds of his fists smashing leather. A typical day in Duran's camp? It looked like this. 4:30 a.m., before the sun even blinked, Duran was already on the road, 5 to 7 miles uphill, often at altitude. He didn't wear a heart monitor. He didn't count strides. He ran by feel, sprinting when his blood boiled, jogging when it didn't. His body learned to recover while still charging forward. 7 a.m. Breakfast was simple and clean. Protein, local fruit, maybe some eggs. No sugar, no flour, no indulgence, just fuel for the fire. 9 a.m. First gym session. No flashy combos or gimmicks. This was footwork, balance, subtle weight shifts, the small things that made his punches explode from inches away. People called him a brawler. But in reality, Duran was a technician who just happened to love hurting people. 12 p.m. Recovery time. Massages focused on his forearms and fists, the weapons that earned him the nickname Hands of Stone. 2 p.m. Back to work. This session was about power. Duran didn't just hit a heavy bag, He punched a baseball bat wrapped in towels over and over to harden his knuckles and train his bones to withstand war. 4 p.m, sparring. And this is where legends were built. While other fighters did 6 or 8 rounds, Duran went 15, sometimes 20. Fresh sparring partners rotated in, but he didn't just box them, he hunted them. Even with heavier gloves, he dropped men with body shots that felt like car crashes. His trainers told the sparring partners to fight dirty, push, grab, frustrate him. Because this wasn't just physical prep, it was mental warfare. Duran wasn't training to win, he was training to survive hell and drag his opponent into it. 7 p.m, final conditioning, hundreds of sit-ups, no fancy machines, no shortcuts. Core strength built from raw effort because Duran didn't move back. He took shots and he kept coming. 10 p.m, lights out. No excuses, no phones, no nightlife. Recovery wasn't optional, it was sacred. Duran's training camps weren't about turning him into a textbook boxer. They were about sharpening the weapon that already lived inside him. He wasn't taught to be a beast. He chose to become one, every single day. The mind of a predator. While Duran's physical training was exceptional, his psychological preparation was perhaps even more remarkable. Unlike today's fighters who often work with sports psychologists to manage aggression and anxiety, Duran did the opposite. He deliberately cultivated a predatory mindset that modern sports science might consider counterproductive. Trainer Arcel would later reveal that before fights they would actually discuss Duran's opponent in deeply personal terms, creating fictional slights and insults to stoke Duran's rage. This wasn't just mind games for his opponents, it was psychological self-programming. Duran didn't visualize victory as many athletes do. He visualized domination, humiliation of his opponent. He trained himself to see every opponent not just as an obstacle, but as an enemy who had threatened his family, his country, his very survival. This manifested most famously in his first fight against Sugar Ray Leonard in 1980, dubbed the Brawl in Montreal. For months during training, Duran consumed footage of Leonard's Olympic victory and subsequent rise to fame. He fixated on Leonard's charisma, his popularity with American audiences, his clean-cut image. By fight night, Duran had convinced himself that Leonard represented everything that had been denied to him as a poor kid from Panama. The result was one of boxing's most intimidating performances. Duran didn't just defeat Leonard, he bullied, battered, and psychologically broke the Olympic champion. Nutritional approach. If there was one part of Roberto Duran's training that stirred the most debate and offered the biggest lessons, it was his approach to nutrition. Unlike today's fighters who follow strict diets under the eye of professional nutritionists, Duran ate like a man of the people, because he was one. During training camps, he kept things simple and disciplined. Lean proteins like fish and chicken, rice and beans, and fresh tropical fruits native to Panama. He didn't touch processed foods, not because of science, but because they weren't part of his cultural lifestyle. But when the fight was over, so was the discipline. Duran was infamous for blowing up between bouts, sometimes gaining 30 to 40 pounds. He lived large, partied hard, and paid for it during training camps that became brutal, weight-cutting marathons. The most damaging example came before his 1980 rematch with Sugar Ray Leonard. After weeks of celebrating his first victory, he had to shed nearly 40 pounds in less than 2 months. His methods were old school and dangerous. Plastic suits, starvation, diuretics, and dehydration. By fight night, he looked ready, but he wasn't. The Duran who stepped into the ring that night was exhausted before the first round began. That fight ended with the infamous no muss. Duran's nutritional roller coaster became a cautionary tale, a model of what not to do. But here's the scary part. Despite all of it, he still beat legends, still made history. That's how tough, raw, and freakishly gifted Roberto Durán truly was. Hand conditioning and power development. Roberto Durán's legendary punching power was no accident. It was forged through unconventional training methods that transformed his hands into formidable weapons. Unlike many boxers who battled chronic hand injuries over time, Durán's fists only grew tougher, a testament to his meticulous conditioning regimen. Every day, he soaked his hands in a mixture of salt water and vinegar to toughen the skin and minimize swelling, a simple yet effective technique. He also massaged them with a special liniment crafted from herbs found in Panama's rainforests, a traditional remedy said to be handed down from indigenous fighters of old. Controversially, Duran swore by knuckle push-ups performed on rough concrete floors, a practice many trainers warn against, but one he credited for his extraordinary hand durability. He also punched rope-wrapped tree trunks, gradually increasing the hardness of his target to further condition his fists. Beyond hand conditioning, Duran's training focused heavily on developing explosive punching power. He emphasized rotational strength over linear force, dedicating hours to medicine ball twists and throws to build the torque needed to generate devastating power, especially in close quarters combat. His obsession with perfecting his signature uppercut led him to train with a harness that restricted arm extension, forcing him to throw thousands of short, precise punches to master delivering maximum force in minimal space. Long before they became a staple in boxing gyms, Duran used resistance bands, punching against their tension to activate his fast-twitch muscle fibers and enhance his explosive speed. These grueling, innovative methods enabled Duran to land bone-rattling punches even when he had little leverage, a skill that became increasingly critical as he moved up through heavier weight classes later in his storied career, cementing his reputation as one of boxing's most feared punchers. Defense and counterpunching. Roberto Duran's offensive brilliance often steals the spotlight, but his defensive genius was just as remarkable, though it's rarely given its due. Far from being a reckless brawler, Duran was a defensive maestro with a style all his own, distinct from the slick, distance-keeping boxers. He mastered proximity fence, staying so tight to opponents that their punches fizzled out before they could land with force. His defensive training revolved around 3 core skills. First, his head movement was honed through hours on a speed bag set at varying heights, not for rhythm, like most fighters, but to perfect the subtle slips and dips that made him a ghost to hit cleanly. Second, he wielded his forearms like shields, a trick born from his street fighting roots. In training, he drilled blocking punches with his forearms while instantly firing back counters, often facing 2 or 3 sparring partners at once to sharpen this instinct. Third, his footwork wasn't the flashy, circling kind, but a grounded dance of tiny weight shifts, keeping him balanced even when he looked wide open. He built this through quirky drills on balance beams and wobbly surfaces. What set Duran apart was how he wove defense into offense. He never practiced dodging without striking back. Every slip or block flowed into a counter, as if safety and attack were one and the same. This seamless blend shone brightest against bigger foes like Iran Barkley, where, despite his smaller frame, Duran's defensive savvy let him dictate distance and timing, taming naturally larger fighters with ease. Legacy and lessons. Roberto Duran's training methods represent both timeless wisdom and cautionary tales for today's fighters. The wisdom lies in his commitment to specificity, training that directly translated to his fighting style rather than generic boxing exercises. His integration of offense and defense, his focus on practical power development rather than gym strength, and his psychological preparation remain valuable blueprints. The cautions are equally clear. His nutritional approach and weight management would undermine any modern fighter's career. His hand conditioning methods carried injury risks that fighters with longer career prospects simply can't afford to take. What's most remarkable about Duran isn't just his peak, but his longevity. Despite his training and lifestyle flaws, he remained competitive at the world level for almost 30 years, with his last world championship coming at age 37. This speaks to an intangible quality that perhaps remains the most important lesson from Duran's career, an absolute love for fighting itself. Through all the training methods, all the championships, all the weight classes, what sustained Duran was a genuine passion for combat that no amount of training can instill. As Arcel once said, "I can teach a fighter how to box. I can't teach him how to want it." Roberto wanted it more than anyone I've ever seen. Roberto Duran's hands may have been made of stone, but his heart, that was pure fire. A fire that still burns as an inspiration to fighters around the world, who understand that true greatness requires more than talent, more than technique, more than training. It requires the spirit that turned a hungry kid from the streets of Panama into one of boxing's immortals. Let me know what do you think about this in comments. Thank you for watching. Back to boxing.